Hi everyone, it's Elizabeth here. So I wanted to do this video kind of about the not so social media and just talking about four pillars of mental health that are happening kind of during this coronavirus situation. I've lost a little bit of my voice. I am not sick. It's just like I think it's allergies and just from over teaching too much, I've just lost my voice. So I was listening to the radio last week and they were talking about how they fear mental health issues rising because of the being like forced to be isolated this time, especially with a lot of the working from home type of culture that you see in Seattle because it's a very tech dominant culture. They have the technology, the capabilities to provide this opportunity to work from home for people who, basically work in tech or for these big boxed corporations. Yesterday was the most dead that I've ever seen downtown Seattle. All the gyms were dead. My classes were dead. The nursing homes, they're putting, a lot of restrictions into just keeping into your room. I had a little bit of an issue at the retirement home yesterday where people are going stir crazy. We can only, at the one I work at, we can only allow one person in the gym at a time, whether that's to use a machine or to work one-on-one with myself for personal training. And I think people are just going a little stir crazy, and it's only been 1 week. I have had people kind of flip out and blow up on me about how stupid these policies are. The front desk isn't answering them back. Like, all of us are really busy trying to keep things in order. So it's really, really difficult when you are, you're the one that's being isolated. It's not easy because the human body is meant to move. The human body has not been designed to sit for long periods of time and to rot in front of a television. The human body has gone through thousands of years of its ancestry of being upright and moving, but also using the brain and the hands to be able to build things like build buildings or to build a farm, build homes, build communities, build a family, and things like that. So this is really difficult for humans on a mental health standpoint of being more sedentary, being forced, to lay low, be in their rooms, or just to stay in their home. Obviously, working from home is really difficult for a lot of people because, one, not everybody's productive at home, but two, going to work for a lot of single people, the people who I train, especially the ones who are in their 40s, if they are not in a relationship, going to work is part of their social life and their social scene. So they want to be at work because they want to be interactive with human beings. It's common for us to want to connect emotionally to humans, whether that's just talking to them or just being around people. We are social creatures. We are not isolated individuals who are meant to roam this planet alone. With all of this talk on individuality and stuff throughout like the spiritual communities or just in general, in the world of psychology, they say you need to love yourself and you need to be comfortable with yourself before being in a relationship with somebody else. And I 100% agree with that. But we can't be so comfortable with ourselves that we just chronically always put ourselves first, because that will never cultivate a relationship. Once you get in a relationship, things have to start to balance out. And you have to think about the other person as well, alongside with taking care of yourself. So it's not easy. I don't think we're meant to wander alone. I think as, man and woman have been created with human hearts, that we are meant to join ourselves together in relationships, but also within community. So social media is kind of a trickster thing because it has made us social in some components. Like, you can socialize with people around the world and make friends with people from the other side of the globe, or play video games, with somebody who's in Asia. But the reality is, the kind of catch-22 is that it's made us more lonely because we've learned how to isolate ourselves behind a computer screen. We've become social like robots, and we've lost a lot of that social skill for people in real life. The dating scene in Seattle, like in the fall, I downloaded a dating app to experience it, and I have met somebody through that, but it was a very awkward situation because a lot of us who are in our mid to late 30s and early 40s, we knew how to socialize and how to date before the dating app. And the other people who are a little bit more introverted or lonely, like that's the primary way that they met people. So for some of us who had a lot of relationships in our 20s, it's like we met people naturally. There's pros and cons with the dating app situation. I'm not going to go into that situation. But what you're noticing today, and people are talking about, like one of my clients just recently went through a breakup, and he's works for Amazon, so they're being forced to work from home through the 31st of March. And he's like, this isn't helping. I really wish that I could go into work today, because going into work was some form of escapism. It was an escapism to get his mind off of the breakup, off of just being at home. So when this place that you work and sleep become your everyday environment, it becomes tough for a lot of people because they are alone. They're alone with their thoughts. They're alone in the confines of the four walls of their apartment or their home. Now, to some degree, we have to toughen up a little bit because this little pandemic is not, I mean, it's spreading, but it's not a catastrophe yet. In addition, it's nothing as compared to what our ancestors went through, where people have raided communities. You know, you had the Nazis taking over like all of Europe and parts of Africa. You know, it's not as bad yet. In addition, it's not as kind of bad as what our ancestors have been through. So to some degree, we have to kind of think about this as a temporary experience, and we're using this as a prevention. When you can get out of your own little bubble of your own chronic selfishness and just thinking only about yourself, this isolation is a form of sacrifice that this community or this city or these areas kind of have to do in order to prevent a mass epidemic of this disease to spread. So when you can look at this from a selfless standpoint and think like, okay, this experience is not all about me. It's not all about my 19 hobbies that I go to. It is a sacrifice so the betterment of our community and our society can hopefully not spread this disease and heal. It's like you're switching your lens on the situation. Now, it's not to say that loneliness is not a legit emotional experience. It is. I would say right now, if I wasn't kind of, I guess, in a relationship, I probably would be a lot lonelier, and it would be a lot more difficult to get through this situation, especially because I've lost about 60% of my income. Gyms have closed. Apartment gyms have no longer allowed group classes to happen in the building because they don't, it's like a health code thing, like 10 or more people in a class. It's like a high risk situation. Retirement homes have canceled their programming and will not let outsiders in. So to some degree, in that sense of mental health, a lot of people, especially the lower rung individuals, like if you work for Microsoft or some company that allows you to work from home, you're great. You're fine with your benefits. You're fine with your wage. You can take a sick day if you want. You are okay. It's the people that actually have to work, the contractors or the people who are making $15 an hour working in a kitchen or a coffee shop. They have to work. Uber drivers, they need to work. They're going to be working regardless if they're sick or not. So in terms of mental health issues, or like fear and panic can arise because people are literally losing their income and losing a lot of their income. I will be lucky if I make a couple $1,000s this month. And this is a very expensive city where rent is almost $2,000 a month. So these kind of fears or panic or worry are legit, especially once it starts affecting your daily needs. Now, there are kind of like 4 pillars of thought in terms of mental health during this situation, especially if you are kind of being in an isolated situation. The first panic and fear the first kind of mental health issue is kind of that fear of the unknown. We don't really know, is this going to spread? Is the media just blowing this up to make it sound worse than what it is? We really don't know. So everybody's like, don't cave into the fear. And you shouldn't at this point in time. If it becomes mass spread, then there's going to be fear and panic, But you don't know if people are stocking up from the store because they're fearful, or they're doing this as a preventative just in case if something happens. So that fear of the unknown is can cause some mental anguish. The second one, I just kind of spent the first half of this video talking about. The second kind of mental health issue is isolation. People are being isolated, especially if they've been a more social creature. Obviously, a lot of those like tech computer guys are kind of antisocial anyways, so they're probably used to living behind a computer screen, or living in their apartment for the majority of their life. But for most people, it's a little bit isolating, especially once you start shifting and cutting out a lot of their activities of daily living. You just really don't know what type of situation people are going through mentally when you isolate yourselves. I mean, obviously, a lot of people are avoiding gyms or places like the rock climbing gym and stuff like that because they're dirtier places. And when you start to take away a lot of those social components of yourself, that can be very isolating. I remember being alone and just having a personal training appointment and me being able just to talk to somebody, even though it's helping them with their issues and problems, have been a lot more that would uplift me for the day or the evening as compared to if I just sat alone at home for the entire day. The third one is boredom and identity. So a lot of the identity crises can start to stir up because people are bored, or they start surfing the internet and start getting into some weird shit, or start filling their head with too much information from YouTube or from commentators and things like that. So your identity can shift during this time. Like, you have a loss of identity because you're losing connection to the things that you were once connected to. In addition to, boredom can cause people to shift their identity by getting into things that maybe they shouldn't, or by just, spending too much time behind the screen. So you have too much information, whether that's listening to too much political commentary, listening to too many speakers on YouTube. These things like that can happen. And the fourth and final one, probably for people who have children, or if you're an elderly person, like, this is very common, is this fear, mental anguish on the pain of going through a flu, but also the death of it. A lot of the people in the retirement home, the one retirement home that I do have, I'm allowed to work in still, they kind of fear death. I don't think a lot of people naturally want to just die unexpectedly from a disease and or go through this painful flu where you're vomiting and, your life is going to kind of like quickly decline from a really bad case of, the flu or pneumonia. So that is legit. I think for the most part, if you're a natural human being who values life, you do not value pain and you do not value death. So the older people, they know that they're going to die, but they kind of want to die, I guess, like, on their own terms, whether that's dying in their sleep or going through a more natural way. I guess a disease can be considered somewhat of a natural cause, but they just don't want a quick decline where all of a sudden you're healthy and then you have this flu and you've lost like 80% of your quality of life and your mobility and things like that. And then you are in fear that every day is a potential day to die from some really bad flu. Probably the healthier adults don't really need to fear this. Probably parents who have children, because children's immune systems are weaker. It's, viruses spread through schools like crazy, or just quicker than normal. That these are some legit fears from people. So these 4 pillars are some things that we have to kind of work through. But hopefully social media to some degree can provide some support or some friendship level or base of making people feel kind of comfortable at this time. We kind of have to toughen up a little bit mentally because, like I said, this is nothing. It's not a war. We're not going through a famine. Grocery stores have been wiped out, but they're, it's wiped out with like sanitary gel and toilet paper. So, it's just being smart. You don't need to roll the entire roll of toilet paper around your hand. Just use a few squares, conserve. and stay clean during this time. Maybe part of the issue is that we're so overly sterilized and clean that our immune systems are weaker than normal. Once it starts mass spreading, then there's like a whole different level of conversation that can happen. But right now, at least in the city of Seattle, it's kind of contained more to like the retirement home in Kirkland. There's probably a few cases around Washington State. So, anyways, these are some thoughts that I have. If, one way one way to not be lonely, I guess during this time might be through the use of social media, but um just know it's a temporary experience and just take every day as is. Maybe it's a time to focus and work on yourself. If you have a lot of spare time because of working from home, and there's certain things, tasks that you need to get done, whether that's house projects or you need to like return these items and stuff to a store, now would be the time to get that done. If you need to drop stuff off at a dry cleaner, this is the time to be productive in your life. So you can kind of spin this mentally so you're not focusing on yourself and your own bubble of isolation and just using this as a, capitalize on this time to get shit done. Maybe this is the time to go to your apartment gym and start working out and getting healthy or thinking about moving and stuff like that. When you're busy with life and constantly having to, balance commuting and work and stress and shitty bosses, it's hard to focus on yourself. So take this time to balance your well-being, boost up your immunity like I talked about in the last video, and hopefully once things become contained, things will start opening up in April again. Let's hope. All right, these are some thoughts that I have. If you have any thoughts or comments, share them below. If not, thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing. If you like my voice, you can subscribe to this channel, and I hope to see you guys soon. Okay, bye.